Hello and welcome. I'm Kamla.
My guest today is filmmaker Mira Nair. The US premiere of her new film, The Reluctant Fundamentalist, was at the 35th Mill Valley Film Festival that was held in October of 2012. It stars British actor Riz Ahmed, Kate Hudson, Liev Schreiber, and Kiefer Sutherland. Mira Nair's film repertoire includes Amelia, The Namesake, Monsoon Wedding, Kama Sutra, Mississippi Masala, and Salam Bombay. We sat down with Mira to talk about her new film and her filmmaking career.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on your new film, The Reluctant Fundamentalist, which is based on a book by Mohsin Ahmed.
That's right.
I'm holding a copy of the book, and I'm going to read out the first paragraph from the book, and maybe we can take off from there. It says, "Excuse me, sir, but may I be of assistance? Ah, I see I've alarmed you. Do not be frightened by my beard. I'm a lover of America." So I just wanted to read that line out, because in many of your films you say you're an outsider and you make films about, if we don't tell stories about ourselves, who will tell our stories? How did this book resonate with you?
Well, The Reluctant Fundamentalist is in essence a dialogue between a young man from Pakistan and a man from America in a tea shop in Lahore in the current day. And the book is fashioned as a elegant kind of mind game where the viewer brings his or her feeling to what may have been happening. But in the movie, we've fashioned it much more as a palpable thriller where two men meet, another man's life is in danger, the clock is ticking over his head, and in the conversation of the two men, we want to find out what will happen, next. But in essence, the film is not a dialogue with America from the subcontinent, but through the humanizing of its central character, a young man called Chengiz. So I think of it as a coming-of-age story. I think of it as a human thriller. A man who grows up in Pakistan, who dreams of America, who loves America, like many of us in the subcontinent are fed with these fantastic images and visions and inspirations from this part of the world, and then comes here to Princeton, ascends Wall Street, falls in love with an American woman, has the American dream as he envisioned it, and then 9/11 happens and he begins to be questioned as to who he might be, and he realizes that he maybe will never belong, and returns to Pakistan. And that is the backstory. And in the current day, he's a young professor in Lahore, and he's being suspected of some involvement with this European professor who has been kidnapped. I used to think, that and feel an outsider, but I am now very much a devotee of engagement with the world. And for me, the interesting and the thing that got me with making The Reluctant Fundamentalist, which is by far the most difficult film I've made, and took 5 years to make, I loved it, wanted to make it, and I thought I was ideal to make it, because I really believe that I have been put on this earth to tell stories of those who live between worlds, like I have. And The Reluctant Fundamentalist is an intimate portrait told with anguish and love about these two societies, the American one and the subcontinental one, but told from within, of someone who knows. Both Mohsin, like me, has spent many of his years living in these countries, in America, in London, and then has returned to Lahore, similarly to me. I've left India for the first time when I was 19 to come on a scholarship to the East Coast in America. I've lived in and out of New York for more than 25-30 years, and now I live in Delhi and in Kampala, Uganda for many years. So that gives me a worldview that which sort of I gravitate towards stories that can encompass this worldview.
So how did you decide to make the film? Did you get the first copy of the book?
I decided, the film came from essentially my first trip to Pakistan, which was about 6 years ago. And I'm a child of modern India, but my father comes from Lahore before it was Pakistan. So we, as kids growing up in Orissa and in Punjab and in Delhi, grew up speaking Urdu, knowing the ghazal of Faiz Ahmed Faiz, reciting poetry, very much the Lahori culture. But I was only invited there for the first time by a young Pakistani student I met at Harvard, in fact, Ali Sethi, who stars in the movie, and who invited us, me and my husband there, and we showed my movies and his books. And anyway, it was a deeply moving experience because it was such a familiar culture, and yet a portrait of an extremely refined country that I had never seen in the newspapers, in the reports, nothing had prepared me for Lahore to be the Venice of the East. The painting, the music, the beauty, the fashion, the violence was always on the outskirts, but it was not something that kept people from living life extremely fully, And that was moving. And I wanted to immediately make a tale of contemporary Pakistan. And it was only 6 months later that I was given the manuscript of The Reluctant Fundamentalist. And I immediately gravitated towards it because not only was it this modern portrait that I wanted to amplify and say and talk of, but it was a dialogue with America. And that is, I think, what the world needs now, because since the last decade, there has been such a terrible schism and myopia and misunderstanding between one part of the world and the other. And I really believe that we're always told the story from only one side. So I came out of a real need to speak of our side, but not to speak of it with, with cudgels, but really to speak of it in a genuine dialogue where one should feel that these two men who are talking to each other, Bobby Lincoln played by Liev Schreiber and Chengiz Khan played by Riz Ahmed, that these two people would be incredible friends in a time and a world that would allow them to be friends.
So I'm thinking of a movie that seems to have influenced you for this, Battle of Algiers.
Mm-hmm.
And there also the director has done a similar
Yes.
treatment, balanced
Yes.
view,
Yes.
looking at the FLN and
Yes.
the French.
Right.
And something very moving happened at the recent Venice Festival.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Do you want to share about it?
Yes. Well, the Battle of Algiers has been a great inspiration for me and millions of others, but really an inspiration for the Reluctant Fundamentalist because it speaks with great balance and love of both sides, the French and the Algerian side. And I wanted to have that sophistication and that emotion in my film. And it takes a lot of care to do that. And we were the opening night of the Venice Film Festival last month, and there was a huge banquet afterwards and a great ovation, and it was a splendid evening. But at the end of it, I saw this older lady sort of make her way through all the tables towards me at the end of the tent, and she came up to me and she introduced herself and said in French that she was Gilles Pontecorvo, the director of Battle of Algiers, his wife, his widow, as she put it. And she said that I want you to know that Gilo lives within you. And I was kind of knocked out by that because, it just hit me and touched me that something had worked, in the film to inspire Gilles Pontecorvo's wife to come find me and say this to me. So it was very, very touching.
So the film, Battle of Algiers, is one of the top 2 or 3 political films of the 20th century and even today. So is there any political aspect that influenced when you made this film, The Reluctant Fundamentalist? Because you're looking at the world of capitalism, which is America,
Yeah.
and you're looking at South Asia, Pakistan in this instance.
Well, we're looking at fundamentalism, the meaning of fundamentalism. That the fundamentalist referred to in the title is not what one would ordinarily think, which is to do with religious fundamentalism and extremism of that, but it is also at its heart to do with economic fundamentalism, because Cengiz is trained as a financial analyst in Wall Street, and he's trained to go in there in factories in the Philippines and in India and various places and in America and Istanbul, wherever, to go in, analyze what sucks the profit, to fire the workers that might create that, and to increase the profit for the company that's hired him. It is the, he doesn't, it is exactly what is happening in the world today, and the scandal of both, people who are subservient to a system like this, and also the scandal of how much they earn. Occupy Wall Street is, I always sort of joke that 99% will see this film because we are from that side, of the 99%. So that is the fundamentalism in the title, both economic and religious, essentially comparing that there is not much difference between these two fundamentalisms in terms of both being both making the human being subservient to this belief system.
So is there anything, did you ever think about who is a good or a bad Muslim? Is that something that comes to your mind?
Actually, The Reluctant Fundamentalist is a deeply secular film. It's really not about Muslimhood or what is Islam or those questions. It's more about how people see each other with labels of this nature, and I wanted to preserve the secularism in the book. I'm not a religious person as such, but I'm interested in how we are put in boxes by people, and I want to question that always. And I want to also, show in a democratic dialogue with two human beings what is not revealed by the other, and what is not known by the other side.
How much of your father did you remember when you were in Lahore?
The film is dedicated to my father, who unfortunately passed away in July. And just
so he knew about the project?
Oh yes, he knew. He read all the drafts. He actually had seen a bit of the rough cut as well. He was very happy. He was very happy about this film. He was really happy about this film.
Did he come with you to Lahore?
No, he was ailing by then. But he had been to Lahore before his death. And he was a great founding member of the Indo-Pakistan Friendship Society. So he had been very involved with Lahore.
Did he give you any tips on where to go for Lahore for food or any?
Of course. I mean, he had close friends there, and so I met them. And I went to his university, Government College in Lahore. I met the principal. I walked around everywhere where he had gone. It was very amazing.
So it must have been very interesting for you after having heard stories from your home, from your father, and then growing up in India where you talk of Pakistan in a very different way, and then to go and see this vibrant city.
Oh yeah, and deeply hospitable people. It's just there's no boundaries to the hospitality one encounters.
So that must have been carried over by Lahoris like your father over to India.
We hope so. Right? I think so. Yeah, I think so.
And how did you spent 5 years in making the film?
Yes.
And you have something called a manifesto that you make for every film?
Yeah.
When did you make the manifesto for this film?
It took about 3 years to adapt the screenplay correctly of The Reluctant Fundamentalist, because the book is a monologue. One person speaks and no one else does, really. And so we had to really create Bobby Lincoln's character, the man, the American who Liev Schreiber plays, who he's speaking to. And Mohsin Ahmed, the novelist, and Ami Bogani, two writers, started on the drafts, and that took a couple of years. And then we brought in Bill Wheeler, who's an amazing also writer. And anyway, so it took about 3 years to create the right draft, and then about 6 months to cast it, which was actually did very easily because Kate Hudson really wanted to play this role, and so did Liev Schreiber and Kiefer Sutherland. It took me about a year and a half to find Riz Ahmed to play Cengiz, because I scoured the world. I went to Pakistan firstly, and then to India, and then to London, and then to America, and then finally found him in London. And so the package, as they call it, was ready to be financed. And then, it took amazingly about a year to finance, because people are generally, I don't know. I mean, it's like we really thought of it always as a global film, as a film about the world. Now, in terms of these two systems, and we really wanted to have the global landscape of a film that went through essentially 3 continents, America and Pakistan and Istanbul and Malaysia and the Philippines. I mean, and I didn't want to hold back from this global kind of tapestry. And so people kept offering us less and less and less and less money until we just tightened our belts and said we had the support, fortunately, of the Doha Film Institute, and they allowed me to do this film with great total freedom, which is a huge thing in our day and age, because to make a political film, to make a personal film, to make something with completely no censorship of any kind is a very rare thing now. It's a gift. And so I had that gift, but we had a lot to do because we had a much lesser budget than the appetite we had. The manifesto is just a binder that I make for every film, where I, with each scene of the screenplay, I attach images of light or photographs or inspirations, and then I write out a typewritten thing of my own thoughts about what this scene should feel like, look like, be like, and I create this scene by scene for the whole film if I'm good and disciplined, and then I speak and express this to all my heads of department, the costume, the cinematographer, all of us who are making the designer, and then we create it together. Essentially, we build it from that and we go further, and so that by the time the movie is being shot, I don't have to speak too much. It's all clear, and we've done our prep, and they've done their work, and I go there to the set and just am allowing inspiration to hopefully happen, and for being fully like blank slate sort of for the actors, to work with the actors to really say to do what I need them to do. So, it's a way of conserving my energy and preserving it for the real thing, which is the emotion of the moment that I'm trying to capture on screen.